Hello, my name is Badr Lagab. Today I'm going to present about cast irons. First of all, I would like to start with the contents. Basically, we have the introduction, the problem and issues in cast iron alloy processing, and the alloys itself, and the processing methods, strengthening mechanism, failure mechanism, and finally we will end up with the conclusion. We will start with the introduction just to give you a brief about my report. Basically, this report attempts to identify issues associated with cast iron alloy processing. The major issues identified in the report are of three major types: sand-related defects, mold design-related challenges, and metal-related defects. All of these defects occur during the production of cast metal alloy. The skin-related issues involve porosities, inclusions, silica thermal expansions, and skin defects. Problem and issues in cast iron alloy processing are mainly one of the biggest challenges in cast iron alloy processing, which is the high number of defects. While mass production and size flexibility are huge advantages of sand casting, the trade-off is that the number of defects tends to be high. If shell casting is used, the range becomes relatively smaller. Furthermore, the cost-effective quality of sand casting is not as pronounced in shell casting. Cast iron alloys are mostly made using the sand casting process, which allows, of course, the cost-effective mass production of various sizes. However, despite its popularity, there are many issues that arise in the processing of cast iron and cast iron alloy. I'm gonna list you some of those issues which have been discussed. Basically, we have the first sand-related defects. The second one, we have the mold design-related defects, and finally, metal-related defects. We have a description of the alloys, in which this is a number of different alloys that fall under the category of cast iron alloys. The most commonly used cast iron alloys have been explained below. There are actually 5 types, which is the ductile cast iron, which is the gray cast iron, compacted graphite iron, white cast irons, and malleable cast iron. These are the 5 types in which we have to give you a brief detail about in some other time. However, we have the processing methods. We have basically 5 melting methods or processing methods. We'll start with the melting, casting, and as you are aware, the sand casting, shell casting, and post-processing. Strengthening mechanism, as we explained earlier, that after some of the key post-processing techniques, it is important also to outline the strengthening mechanisms used in the making of cast iron alloys. Many times it is important for the application of cast iron alloys that the finished product exhibits increased resistance to wear afforded by the alloy products that come out following the casting process. In order to get these results, we have mainly the alloy goes through the process of toughening, hardening, and normalizing the product. These are different strengthening mechanisms that are employed regularly on cast iron. These strengthening mechanisms, however, are employed regularly on cast iron. These strengthening techniques are not new. In fact, they have been in practice for decades. Heat treatment, as I mentioned in the previous section, also helps improve strength. It reduces the residual stress in the product by giving a homogeneous podcast. The failure mechanisms, as I discussed on strengthening mechanisms, which is important to understand what failure mechanisms are undertaken when considering cast iron alloys. Basically, the brief topics are the fatigue and wear resistance, which is a long term that should be considered with cast iron alloy process. And as we conclude, basically this report provides an overview of the major problems and issues that arise in the processing of cast iron alloy, and which is covering various types of cast iron alloys and the process itself. We came up now to the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we will meet soon, inshallah. And I would like to thank Professor Omar Zaidi and Dr. Antan for their continuous support, and thank you so much for your listening.